Welcome to another edition of the MMA Lockcast. It is a double header this week as we have PFL going down on top of the UFC 319 card. And this is the second finals event for the PFL card and the second last tournament card I believe they have as well. They got 10 fights in tow, not to mention a headliner that features Rabadanov, who's looking to earn a second straight lightweight title with the PFL after winning last season as well. And he takes on the Brit Alfie Davis. Co-main event actually features another title fight, or finale we should say, between former Bellator champion Liz Carmouche taking on Jenna Bishop. So intriguing grapple fest there. Looking forward to seeing how that one plays out. As always, dropping this for you guys as soon as I can. It is Wednesday of fight week. This fight starts on Friday, or will take place on Friday. Decent card all around, some recognizable names, some decent betting spots as well. I do like a handful of underdogs on this card, and I can't wait for the comment section to rip me apart on some of these spots, but ran the tape and I like what I see on some of these spots, so we'll see if we can cash some of those tickets. I've already dropped some plays on the Lock of the Night Patreon page, so if you want to check that out, check the link in the description below. Already got a handful of UFC 319 plays as well, and later on this evening I should be getting into the LFA card, and then I'll have written breakdowns, track plays for that on the Lock of the Night Patreon page, as well as the Legacy Warriors podcast, where I break down the entire LFA card for you guys. That will likely drop Thursday after the wins have completed and all the matchups have been approved. Then I'll drop that podcast, so stay tuned for that. All right. That's a wrap on the intro part of the podcast here. Let's get right into the breakdowns. Like I said, 10 fights, and it starts off between Damian Nelson, who comes in at plus 210, going up against Isaiah Diggs, who comes in at minus 260. Now, Nelson is looking to come back into the PFL and right the wrong after he suffered a third straight defeat in his last matchup, and that actually brought his record to a 4-4, 500 record. Since then, he's gone on a 4-fight winning streak, even winning and defending the Combat FC title, which is a Fight Pass organization, I believe, out in the Northeast. And he showcased good takedown defense. His striking is already up to snuff there. That's where he likes to implement most of his damage, is by picking opponents apart from distance, putting combinations together, good leg kicks as well, and good range management. It's really been his wrestling where opponents have been able to get the better of him in the past, and also the lack of volume at times. But it seems he's been improving both of those aspects of his game since then, and hence why he has a 4-fight winning streak right now. But he's going to be really tested by a collegiate wrestler here in Isaiah Diggs, who is 11-0 in his mixed martial arts career. 6 of those wins coming as an amateur, 5 of them as a pro. Decent competition he's been facing on the regional scene as well. His opponents have a combined record of 11-1, and he's defeated them all. I believe he won all of those fights by decision, largely fueled by his wrestle-heavy approach. He's a training partner of Elijah Smith, who just picked up a big slam KO win this past weekend over Toshiomi Kazama, but that's not Diggs' game. He kind of likes to get to his wrestling, doesn't really slam opponents, tries to get that top control. His striking is a lot of just power punching, stalking his opponents, and then once he gets them up against the cage, that's where he starts to get to his chain wrestling style and look to get these opponents to the ground. It still seems a little uncomfortable in the striking realm, but he's made it work for himself, and he's definitely going to be challenged in that aspect here against Damian Nelson. Both guys will be tested in their respective mixed martial arts styles, at least where they have their flaws. But I'm going to lean on the wrestling of Diggs. This will be the best wrestler Nelson has fought since his last loss, and I think that Diggs could exploit that hole in his game. But if he can't, Nelson could surely have some success on the feet, as long as he's not muzzled by the threat of the takedown from Diggs. Minus 260 is a little bit wide for my liking on Diggs. Again, with Nelson being the slicker striker, if he can keep this fight upright, he might have the advantage, or at least have success there and win this fight to pull off the upset. But I'm going to lean on the wrestling of Diggs to exploit that flaw in Nelson's game. All right, next up, we got Kenley St. Louis coming in at minus 285, going up against Chris Mixan, who comes in at plus 225. Now, St. Louis pulled off a big upset last time around against Mohamed Burkamov, where it was a 1-1 fight going into the final round, but it seemed like St. Louis had a little bit more left in the gas tank, and he was able to push for a finish and force the tap against the Dagestani fighter. going into that fight, St. Louis was obviously a big underdog, and it seems like the pendulum has really swung in his favor after that Burkamov win, but I think we have to temper our expectations. Normally, he's a good wrestler, good top control, good BJJ. Striking is a lot of just power shots, but it's all about setting up his takedowns. His cardio has been a bit of an issue when he can't dictate the pace or have some of his takedowns help him, suck some wind. And obviously, the success of his close training partner, Thad Jean, is obviously buoying him during this 9-fight winning streak that he currently finds himself on, and just goes to, 8 straight wins now after starting his career 3-4. Now he's going up against Chris Mixan, who actually went 2-0 with the PFL back a couple fights ago. Then he took a little bit of a hiatus to fight for other promotions, putting together a 2-1 record, suffering his first MMA loss through 12 total fights. That includes his amateur fights as well. That fight, I believe he had a decent argument to actually win it, was showcasing good striking, good combinations. He's a slick boxer, fast hands, good power in his shots as well. And I think that's kind of the crux of his game. His takedown defense normally holds up for the first 2 rounds or so. Then it starts to fall off in later rounds. But it depends on the level of grappler that his opponent is as well. He did manage to bounce back into the win column last time around at LFA 200. I believe that was back in January, where he was able to box up Joey Hart, who is a former Contender Series competitor, and he eventually found that big shot to put Joey Hart away about 2 minutes into the first round. That just goes to show the type of hands, the speed, the power that Mixan has, especially fighting a taller and lankier opponent like he was against Joey Hart. Now here it's clear grappler versus striker matchup, but I think the odds are just way too wide here for St. Louis. Again, he was a big underdog to Burkamov, and of course he pulls off the upset after Burkamov slows down, and he might be able to have some grappling success here against Mixan, but again, Mixan has shown decent takedown defense and get-ups in the first 2 rounds of most of his fights, and if he can showcase that once again and get to his striking against St. Louis, he might be able to find the knockout before St. Louis is able to implement that grappling approach more effectively in deep water. But again, if Mixan can keep him working, keep him on his back foot, land some big shots, some good counter shots, maybe land some shots to the body, maybe St. Louis doesn't have the grappling technique that he can implement in the 3rd round as he starts slowing down due to the damage he's going to be suffering in return. So I like the underdog shot here on Mixan. I think he was a highly touted PFL prospect. He obviously has some holes in his grappling game, but I don't think they're big enough to the point that St. Louis is going to fully, smash him in that realm to make himself look, 75% indicated in this matchup. Mixan is the better striker, and I think he'll show it off here, and I think he'll win this fight by knockout. The under 2.5, if it's at plus money, I may consider a little bit of a shot on that, but as of this recording, there is no totals or are no totals available for the PFL card yet. Our next up, we got Khavalov coming in at minus 700, going up against Wilson. Ndregjoni, nailed it, coming in at plus 475. We already know what to expect with Khavalov, training alongside the Nurmagomedovs over there in Dagestan. Heavy wrestling, heavy top pressure. But last time around, when he took on a 9-1 Brazilian prospect, he was unable to land the takedowns, and that was also his PFL debut. But he still managed to get a ton of control time up against the cage, landing with his clinch work. I believe 90% of that fight had Fernandez pinned against the cage, and he really couldn't do anything about it. Khavalov has the cardio to go 15 if he has to. His striking is obviously improving at a steady rate, but it's all about the wrestling for him. And that's usually the case for his opponent Wilson as well, who normally takes a grapple-heavy approach in a lot of his matchups. He's a former CFFC champion who went 6-1 over his last 7 fights. He was scheduled to fight Marceli Alves earlier this year in the PFL for an alternate bout, but Alves, obviously we know, stepped in to fight Ego and then ultimately made it to the finals, and we'll be talking about him in a couple fights here. But Wilson, his only loss in that 7-fight streak that he had, that 6-1 run, was for the Fury FC title, where he came up short against Justice Torres. A lot of that had to do with him starting to slow down in the latter half of that fight and being unable to really have much success when he couldn't get his takedowns going. His striking is not all that bad. Trains out of K Dojo, which also houses the LFA welterweight champion Shamid Khan Magomedov, and is also known as the first American gym that Khabib Nurmagomedov was training at before he moved over to AKA. Decent training partners, decent coaches, decent game, but unfortunately for him, Khavalov is just a better version of Ndregjoni everywhere. I think he's the better grappler, better wrestler, better clincher, better striker, better cardio as well. So, I think this minus 700 line, chalky, but I think that this is a parlayable spot for Khavalov. It might be close early, but I really think that Khavalov starts to pull away with this matchup in the second and third rounds, as I think he'll be able to start landing those takedowns, and Wilson will struggle to get off of his back. So give me Khavalov, and Khavalov by decision. Our next up, we got the highly anticipated PFL debut of amateur standout Sabrina de Sousa, who comes in at minus 1,200, going up against Sarah Orozco, who comes in at plus 700. Now, de Sousa, this is a matchup where I normally say just squash match and then just move on to the next one. It is a bit of a squash match, but I really wanted to look into de Sousa because I heard a lot about her coming into her PFL signing. She went 15-0 as an amateur, fighting opponents that were, Cecilia, I believe, Bolander, who just fought for the Octagon title this past weekend, beat Michelle Montague, who just signed with the UFC recently, and she's going out there and doing good work against a lot of these fighters. She's now 3-0 as a pro, finishing all of those opponents. She has nasty combinations, big power in her shots, but the majority of her wins have come by submission, so obviously you'll be looking for her to get fights to the ground when she sees she has a big enough advantage there. I may go as far as saying that this is a Dakota Dacheva level prospect that we have on our hands, but hopefully the PFL takes it nice and slow with her so that she can continue to develop at a decent rate. Orozco is 0-2 now in the PFL. No idea why she's taking this matchup, but she's thinking that maybe she could pull off the upset. She's aggressive no matter where she is in the cage, whether she's on her back or looking to take command with her striking. But I think she's going to be completely outgunned here by de Sousa. The spot that I'd be looking at if we get props for this would be de Sousa by submission. Orozco has good durability. Will she be able to eat a shot from de Sousa? Maybe, maybe not. But if de Sousa really wants to take the path of least resistance, it would be to take Orozco to the ground, and from there, I think she'll be able to find a submission opportunity. So if it's at a decent plus money spot, maybe I'll take that de Sousa by sub. But regardless, we don't take minus 1,200s no matter the mismatch. I would pass on the parlay money line here. Maybe look to attack this from a props perspective, but I think de Sousa cruises here and eventually finds a submission. All right. Next up, we got Biagio Ali Walsh coming in at minus 450, going up against Adrian Grundy, who comes in at plus 350. Now, Ali Walsh suffered his first pro loss last time around against Ronnie Gibbs. I believe that was only a couple months ago. And Walsh had a solid first round where he hurt and dropped Gibbs a few times, but it seems he almost left himself in that first round because he did come out with a barrage of shots in the second round, gave up an easy takedown, and from there he had almost no answer from the big shots that were coming down from Gibbs, who eventually, I believe, sunk in an arm triangle choke, I think it was, and forced the tap from Ali Walsh. That's a big learning lesson for Walsh, right? And I think that was a big learning lesson for a lot of bettors as well, that you got to be very careful parlaying these minus 1,000 favorites, especially so early in their career, because they're still learning on the job. Walsh is primarily a striker, and his explosivity and strength has helped him in the past get out of some grappling spots. But as he continues to take steps up in competition, it'll get harder for him to get out of those spots. But when he can establish himself in the striking range, his speed, power, and accuracy with the strikes will definitely benefit him. And hopefully he learned from the lack of gas tank management from his last matchup, and hopefully he takes a better approach in this matchup so he can bounce back from his first defeat or first pro defeat as a mixed martial artist. He's going up against Adrian Grundy now, who looks like a striker himself. This guy went 2-3 as an amateur. He's now 3-1 as a pro on a 3-fight winning streak, if I'm not mistaken. Mainly a striker. This guy likes the calf kick, likes to kick his opponent's legs, has some decent pop on his shots, but not a big knockout threat. And I think that's going to cause him some issues in terms of getting the respect from Walsh here. And I think that will lead to Walsh just picking him apart and getting his confidence back. I think it could lead to a knockout, but I'm hoping that Walsh is a little bit more careful in terms of expending his energy so he doesn't repeat what happened to him last time around. So, we're used to seeing Walsh as a minus 1,000 favorite at minus 450 here. I think he may be worthy of a parlay opportunity, as I just don't see enough threat from the Grundy side. We don't see him grapple. He's mainly a striker. He may look to grapple here, but obviously I'm sure Walsh has been drilling his takedown defense and get-ups, especially after what happened last time around. So I like Walsh here. I think he gets the knockout, and I may consider parlaying him as well. All right, next up, we got a rematch between Juliana Velasquez, who comes in at plus 190, taking on Ekaterina Shakalova, who comes in at minus 230. Now, last time around, Velasquez came up short against Shakalova as a minus 210 favorite. There was a weird scramble to start off the fight there, and Shakalova was able to immediately get under the chin of Velasquez, and it took her a little bit of repositioning, but she eventually sunk in the rear naked choke and forced a tap from the former Bellator champion. Things have been kind of rough for Velasquez, as she is now 1-4 over her last 5 fights, but 3 of those losses came to Liz Carmouche, who just seemingly had her number. But Velasquez did manage to showcase why she was such a dominant Bellator champion when she was, with her win over Lisa Malden, mauling her on the ground and eventually getting that second round finish. Velasquez is normally a very good wrestler with good top control and just good pressure and landing some ground and pound. Her striking is not all that bad either, but she is also getting up there in age, as she is 38 years old. Shakalova, on the other hand, made it to the semifinal last time around, but came up short against the high-level BJJ prowess of Jenna Bishop, where Shakalova eventually got submitted in the second round of their matchup. Shakalova has shown a volume-heavy approach in the feet, but she's also shown a grapple-heavy approach, obviously, which paid off for her last time around against Velasquez. But similar to the Kenley St. Louis fight that I talked about earlier, I think the pendulum has just swung far too much in favor of Shakalova here, especially when you consider there was only really one scenario that played out, and obviously Shakalova got the better of Velasquez, but that's kind of what odds are about. We assumed that Velasquez would win the fight last time around at roughly a 70% rate, between 65 and 70%. And it turned out that the 30 to 35% chance for Shakalova played out last time around. I still believe that Velasquez is, maybe not 65, 70%, but maybe closer to 60, 65%. And I think she'll be able to showcase that here, and we're getting the odds to justify that as well. I'd be surprised if she gets caught in a similar situation. I think she'll be the better wrestler here. I think she can provide enough resistance from that top position to cause Shakalova to just be grounded out and not have much success. I'm expecting Shakalova to throw up some submissions off of her back, but I think she'll struggle to really capture anything there. And even with this fight on the feet, I think Velasquez could have some success there, landing the bigger, heavier shots and kind of thwarting the output that Shakalova may be throwing there. So I think it's a no-brainer shot to take Velasquez here. This fight was only a couple months ago where Shakalova pulled off the upset, and it's hard to justify her going from a near plus 200 underdog to now a minus 230 favorite. I don't think it makes sense. I think that just shows the short-mindedness of the MMA world and the betting game, and we have to try to take advantage of that. I think Velasquez is more than worthy of that plus 190 line in terms of a bet, and I think she'll come through for us, and I think she wins it by decision. All right, next up, we got Mads Burnell coming in at minus 165, going up against Robert Watley, who comes in at plus 135. Now, Burnell is a guy that usually takes a grapple-heavy approach in a lot of his fights, but he was struggling to do so against J.J. Wilson last time around, who was very aggressive, started landing easy takedowns after that first round, and then eventually Wilson was able to get that finish at the ending of the third round. Burnell is a solid BJJ specialist, but I question his wrestling ability against superior wrestlers and the superior grapplers. And then on the feet, not a lot of pop and power on his shots, but when he gets into his groove, he can really throw output there and really cause opponents a lot of problems in terms of getting to their own game. He likes to move forward. His durability is pretty high level, but he's a very beatable opponent, especially when he's at an athleticism and aggressiveness disadvantage. And I think that's the case here against Robert Watley. Now, Watley is a guy that I wish was a little bit more active earlier in his career. Between 2019 and 2023, he had no fights. He went 0-2 in the PFL back in 2018, losing to guys like Chris Wade and Will Brooks. But I think we've seen him improve his game. He obviously captured the CFFC title in 2023, defended it twice, showcase, now comes into the PFL. Strong wrestler, very good grappling, does not settle for bad positions for too long, has good top control, has a slick striking game as well, is very strong, again, very good wrestling, and I think that's going to be the difference maker here against Burnell. I'm looking for Watley to out-wrestle him. I'm looking for him to shut down the grappling game of Burnell from his back. I think we'll see Watley cruise to a decision here, and to get him at plus 135. I think that's more of a testament to people not knowing much about Watley, whereas Burnell is a UFC veteran, PFL Bellator veteran. Watley just never got those opportunities, and I think that we'll see him now showcase how good he actually is. I know he's going to be 35 or is already 35, but I think that this is still a very winnable fight for him as long as he doesn't gas out, which I don't think he will. We saw him pull off a round 3 or round 4 submission last time around in the CFFC, and I think as long as his wrestling is as good as I remember it to be, he should be able to get the better of Burnell here. So give me Watley, and Watley by decision. All right. The first of 3 PFL title fights now. This one takes place, I believe, in the bantamweight division, where you got Mercerly Alves coming in at minus 215, going up against Justin Wetzell, who comes in at plus 175. Now, the intriguing thing about this matchup are both of these guys were alternates to come into the bantamweight tournament, and they both made it to the finals, so credit to them. Now, starting off on the Alves side of things, he entered the tournament on short notice with a 12-4 record. In the past, he had been outgrappled and muzzled by most opponents, but he seems to have improved that aspect of his game, which allowed him to outstrike and outland Leandro Higo to win that first world tournament fight. And then last time around, just completely demoralized Jake Hadley from jump with big leg kicks, big power shots, and Hadley couldn't sniff a single takedown. But that's where guys normally have success against Alves, when they're able to mix in the striking enough to get the grappling going and then slowly start wearing Alves down. You see Alves' shots, he's a guy that likes to throw pretty much everything into every single strike, but he was unable to finish either of his last 2 opponents. So you have to wonder, if he's forced to go 5 rounds, which he could potentially have to here against Justin Wetzell, will his effective striking carry over into those deeper rounds if he can't get that early finish? Now, Justin Wetzell is a guy that's often underrated, I should say. We got a decent line on him last time around to fade Mando Gutierrez, and it seemed like he broke Gutierrez with the first takedown. It was pretty much smooth sailing for him for the rest of that fight to win it with relative ease. Prior to that, he pulled off a big upset victory over the 16-1 Dagestani Kasum Kasumov, where he pretty much outscrambled him, outgrappled him, beat him with cardio, beat him with pressure, beat him with pace, and that's Justin Wetzell at his best. He's a guy I believe was a LFA standout as well. He suffered one of his losses there to Rafael do Nascimento, where he got caught, but he's on a solid winning streak ever since then. Very good in terms of just applying his pressure and just keeping opponents in bad positions. He chain wrestles very well. His entries are very educated. He mixes up the striking enough to get to the wrestling and get in on those chain wrestling attempts, and I think that's going to be his key here against Alves. Of course, it's going to be very dangerous for him in the first round and a half to 2 rounds, but I think that he has improved his striking defense enough, and I think he's been able to come up with a good enough game plan to really, or I hope he's come up with a good enough game plan to really thwart the power striking approach of Alves, and I think this is clearly the best grappler that Alves has faced since the last fight that he lost by decision. I think it was against Sarvarjan Hamidov, who was able to thwart Alves and just keep him in a defensive position the whole time. Hadley couldn't sniff a single takedown, and I think that was a lack of his ability to really mesh the striking and grappling game. And then Leandro Higo, never seen him desperate wrestle the way that he did. He landed a few of them, but a lot of his shots were very poorly timed. It gassed him out, caused him to just be at the whim of Alves' striking, whereas I think we'll see a little bit more of an educated approach from Wetzell with his takedowns, with his clinch game, and wearing Alves down. So, of course, there's big danger, and I completely understand why Alves is the favorite here. The line is just too wide. I think Wetzell is going to be way more competitive than that, and I think if he can escape that first round and a half without getting finished, he should be able to start wearing Alves down. And I don't want to call him, who's the Movlid Khaybulaev, right? A lot of people saw Jesus Pinedo striking as the difference maker with Khaybulaev, and he got completely muzzled for pretty much that entire fight. Not saying Wetzell will make it look as lopsided, but we have to remember those things where if those dangerous strikers are unable to get those early finishes and they're going up against, educated and rugged grapplers, they might end up slowing down and giving up those takedowns and start fighting off their back and losing fights. And I think Wetzell is capable of doing that here against Alves. So I'm going to go Wetzell by decision. I completely understand it. It's going to be an unpopular pick, but I'm going to go with the guy that has a better gas tank, in my opinion, and has the grappling upside, especially in deeper water. All right, co-main event now, where we got the women's flyweight PFL title on the line here, or PFL World Tournament title, whatever you want to call it. We got Jenna Bishop coming in at plus 225, going up against former Bellator champion Liz Carmouche, who comes in at minus 285. Now, Bishop suffered her first 2 pro losses back in 2024 when she came up short against eventual winner Dakota Dacheva and then former UFC fighter Tyler Santos. We saw Bishop have some decent success against Santos, but she couldn't get anything off against Dacheva, and she was obviously finished soon thereafter. She bounced back strongly in 2025 as she was able to get a decision win over Kana Watanabe, mixing in her grappling and some decent striking to get that victory. And then last time around, she was able to get that second round submission over Ekaterina Shakalova. Bishop, high-level BJJ specialist. That's why you obviously see her getting to the grappling as soon as she can so she can implement that style. She's decent off of her back. Her wrestling is improving. Her striking is improving. The only issue is I wish that she got into the MMA game a little bit sooner. And even though she doesn't have a whole lot of MMA miles on her body, at 38 years old or 37, I think she's between 37 and 38, maybe even 39, it doesn't leave a lot of room to try to get the better of some of these fighters who have been in the MMA game for so long, or even giving herself enough of a time frame to try to make a stamp in the MMA game. So it makes sense why the UFC never decided to pick her up after she had a decent LFA run, and why she ends up finding herself with the PFL. She's going up against Liz Carmouche, who I was kind of surprised was as big of a favorite as she was against Elora Dana last time, but she made it look the number as she was able to utilize good control in rounds 1 and 3 and lean more on her striking in round 2 to pick up that unanimous decision win. Normally, she goes out there, looks to take opponents to the ground and smash them from that top position, or look for submissions, or even just control them en route to decision victories. But her striking has obviously improved even at 41 years old. It's crazy that she's 11-1 now since leaving the UFC, with her lone loss coming to, I believe it was Tyler Santos. Tough fight for her that night. Just a stronger Santos was able to get the positions that she needed. She's done a good job at 41 years old. Now, in this matchup, I understand why she's the favorite. I think she has a wrestling advantage. I think she has a strength advantage. I think her BJJ is good enough to shut down anything Bishop throws at her. And then I think if Carmouche looks to keep this fight on the feet, she can land some big power and really cause Bishop a lot of problems. I wouldn't even be surprised if you see Carmouche go back to what she did against Alima Lay McFarlane, and that was just batter the lead leg and get that TKO by leg kicks. So, I like Carmouche here. I'll be interested in the KO prop if it's at a decent enough number. If it was a 3-rounder, maybe Jenna Bishop is a good underdog, but a 5-rounder definitely benefits Liz Carmouche, and I think that will lead to her getting a finish here as she shuts down the BJJ game of Jenna Bishop. All right, that brings us to the lightweight finale headliner here, where we got Alfie Davis coming in at plus 525, going up against Gaji Rabadanov, who comes in at minus 800. I don't want to spend too much time on this because you probably already know who I'm going to be picking here. But Davis, decent striker, decent grappler as well. Nearly lost his semifinal bout to Brent Primus, but luckily a last-minute reversal in the third round allowed him to land some big shots against Primus and win that fight on the scorecards. But that's kind of been Davis's issues in the past, is that he doesn't do well against strong grapplers who can hold him down and kind of thwart some of the submissions that he tries to throw off of his back. Decent pop on his shots, very unorthodox as well, just as we saw when he finished Clay Collard. But it all comes down to him being able to fight at his range and at his distance, and I just don't think that Rabadanov will allow him to do that. I think we'll see Gaji just keep the pressure on him, keep that forward pressure, threaten with some takedowns, and I think eventually he gets Rabadanov to the ground, he gets Davis to the ground, breaks him down, and then probably by the third round, he's able to muster up a finish here. I don't know if it'll be by submission or TKO, but I really think that Rabadanov will mix in his improved striking game enough to eventually mix in those takedowns and then really grind out Davis from that top position and win this fight inside the distance, and once again, winning the PFL season/tournament format. There you guys go. Full card breakdown for PFL World Tournament 9. Got a bunch of content coming out over the next few days, so stay tuned for that on top of the LFA breakdown that I'll drop for you guys tomorrow. I'll have the tough finale breakdowns, which actually opens up the UFC 319 card. That will drop probably on Thursday since no odds have been dropped for that yet. So stay tuned for that. But we got the top 3 lock of the night candidates. We got the chalk or not segment. We got quick picks dropping tomorrow. And then we got the Locky 2-step / Locky Trinity free parlay and prop drop dropping on Friday. So this will be a very busy channel over the next 72 hours. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe if you haven't already. Hit that notification bell so you know when all those segments drop. And yeah, I've already made some plays for this card. So check out the MMA Lock of the Night Patreon page if you want to have access to that. All right. I'll see you guys later on today for the top 3 lock of the night candidates. See you guys then. Peace.
Last thing.